Hi, and welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 287, and today's date is February 11th, 2014, and the title of this episode is U.S. and China Are at War, but the World Doesn't Know It Yet. And we're going to get into that a little bit later in this report. But let's get right into the economic collapse news. We're going to head out to Cyprus. And as we know, in Cyprus, they did a test of the bail-ins. One day, the people woke up and all their bank accounts were frozen, and the government officials were out there saying, listen, don't worry about it. It's only going to be for 2 weeks or so, and we're going to take between 8 and 10% of your money, and that's it. Well, we're going to be going on for about a year now with capital controls in Cyprus, and actually they took 47% of the people's money and replaced it with worthless bank stock. And this was a test of the FDIC Bank of England document, which was created in December of 2012. And that is on the x22report.com site under Resources Documents, and you can go take a look at that. That document has now been passed around to all the countries, and they have copied it, the Eurozone, Australia, Canada, Switzerland, and they have copied it because they are getting ready for a bail-in. Now, Cyprus has just announced that they are going to relax the capital controls starting next week. We're going to have to see how this turns out and if they actually do it, or they might say we're relaxing the capital controls, but we have other emergency type of controls in effect, and they might call it by a different name. We're going to have to see if they actually have done it, because they've said this many, many times. When it first happened, they said, oh, 1 more week. Then they said 1 more month. Oh, another month. And then, before you knew it, it's a year later. So, all this time, people have not been able to get their full amount of their money out of the banks. And let me just tell you, if I was in Cyprus, the first thing I would do once they say that capital controls are relaxed and you can go ahead and take out your money. Now, they might do it in stages. They might say, okay, today you can do 400, next week it might be 700. So, we'll have to see how they actually work this out. But we will see. The first thing I would do is start taking as much as I possibly could, and I think everyone in Cyprus is going to do just that. Now, in the UK, Barclays is laying off around 12,000 people, and I've been reading and seeing other things that other banks are going to start laying off a lot of employees at this time, and we're going to have to see how this plays out. But Barclays is saying it has to cut costs, and after announcing its profits and increasing bonuses for the investment arm, they're going to have to let go around 12,000 people. And you have to remember, this same bank last year let go 7,650 people. So the amount of layoffs are going up, not down. So here are more people without work. People who had full-time, nice salary jobs are now without work. Now, if every other bank is going to start reporting layoffs, because you have to remember back, Meredith Whitney back in September or so said there were major layoffs that were going to happen in the fall of 2013. Now, it seems like nothing really happened, but now we're seeing a lot of layoffs coming down the pike, and I think everything's just been pushed back at this point. We're seeing Barclays laying off, and we're going to start to see other banks and other financial institutions start to lay off people, because they understand what is going on. They understand they can't keep this propped up, and they need to reduce the workforce. But again, where are all these people going to get work? Where they're going to look for jobs? They're not going to find it out there, because if everyone else is laying off, there is no place for them to go. And this is what we saw in 2008. All those banks and all those financial institutions that were just laying off, there was no place to go. And, this is why you have underemployment. This is why the employment rate is really around 37%, because when there's no place to go, you can't find work. And if you can't find what you were doing, you find jobs that pay less, or part-time work, and you work in that. And that's why underemployment is so high and unemployment is so high right now. And if we really look at the economy, and I know the illusion is out there that everything is going well, the market's back up, and all eyes on the S&P. They're all talking about the S&P going to 1900. They're all looking at the Dow and it's going up again, and everyone is saying, "Ooh, look, the economy is still strong. The unemployment rate's coming down to 6.6%, and it'll probably come down even lower." Again, it is hard to look through this illusion, but it is an illusion. All these calculations have been manipulated to make you believe that we are in a recovery. And again, they have to keep telling us that we're in a recovery. The president goes out there, we're in a recovery. All the financial institutions are out there saying we're in a recovery. But if you look past that, you can see what's really going on. We see it by the retail sales. We see it by the real estate sales and the amount of mortgages that are being applied. People that are applying for these mortgages, and they're down by 66%. You can see that most of the houses are purchased with cash from hedge funds and investment companies, and of course they're getting this money from the Fed. So we can see what is going on around here. And we can see that things are not going well. And if you really look, and we look through all this, we can see that wholesale inventories have missed expectations and rose at their slowest rate since July 2013 at a mere 0.3%. And we also have to realize that the wholesale inventory growth is the second slowest in a decade. Now, as we can see, the gold manipulation is going on. They continually push down gold. Every time it starts to move up a little bit, they push it back down. But if we look at what's going on around the world, at these cheap, inexpensive prices, gold demand is way up. In Dubai, gold jewelers just reported the strongest gold sales in 7 years. India reported that silver bullion imports hit a 5-year record from April 2013 to January 2014. Australia's Perth Mint said gold sales jumped 41% and silver 33% in 2013. In January, gold demand was up 10% and silver 8%. Mexico's pension funds are now investing in gold after strict investment regulations were recently lifted. And countries are purchasing more and more gold. Turkey purchased around 150 tons, Vietnam 110, Russia 57 tons. If we look, Ukraine 6.22 tons, Venezuela 1.87 tons, Indonesia 4 tons, and if we look at China, they did a record 1,139 tons of gold. And if we look back at the United States, and I cannot find anything, if the United States is purchasing any gold whatsoever, and I can't find anything out there that even says that the United States is purchasing anything. But the gold demand for 2013 jumped 24% in the United States, and it's continually increasing in 2014. So we can see as these prices are coming down, people are realizing that this gold, the precious metal market, is manipulated, so they are going out there and they're purchasing more of it. And again, you have to look at this whole entire thing this way, that gold, silver, it is on sale. They're bringing the prices down for you right before the economic collapse, so go out and purchase what you need to purchase. Again, gold and silver, palladium, platinum, any precious metal is an insurance policy if the paper currency completely declines and plummets and collapses and implodes on itself. That is what the precious metals are for. You keep them with you, you hold on to them, they're physical, and when the new currency comes, they'll be priced in a completely different way. And again, it is also a hedge against inflation. So we can see that holding precious metals is really not an investment, it is more like an insurance policy. Okay, now, with Obamacare, we understand that employees like Home Depot, Forever 21, and many other companies have started to reduce the number of hours that people work. And they started to move people who were full-time maybe into some part-time positions. And they were doing this because they didn't want to spend the extra money or pay for any type of penalties that they would occur because of Obamacare. And what has happened is more and more people were being laid off, hours were being reduced, people weren't making the money just so they wouldn't have to participate in Obamacare. And the government, the White House, Obama realized this and said, whoa, 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 whoa. And they didn't want to admit it, but the number of people employed has been dropping because of Obamacare. And again, if you know everyone pretty much knows how I feel about Obamacare. It is not for the people. It is a cash grab. So what did President Obama? He saw what was happening, and he decided that he was going to change the health insurance law, and he was going to delay the employer mandate. And this is the second time he's done this. He's going to do this, and they have until now 2016. But what else did he do? Well, he also rewrote some of the Affordable Care Act here, and what he did was to be eligible for the postponement of the mandate to 2016. This is what each employer needs to do. They cannot reduce the size of their workforce over the overall hours of service of its employees unless it can be justified through the Internal Revenue Service. So they have to prove why they are reducing people's hours or getting rid of people. This is what he has done right now. The Affordable Care Act, as passed by Congress, says companies with more than 50 full-time equivalent employees must provide minimum essential coverage starting January 1st, 2014, or pay a fine. And large employers, those who have 100 or more, must provide coverage to only 70% of their workers in 2015. But the regulations also say that effective yesterday, employers may not shed employees or work hours just to get below the 100 employee threshold, and thus avoid Obamacare's penalties for another full year. So if a company has 101 employees and they don't want to pay, what they'll do is they'll reduce the hours or lay off the people to bring them to 99. And again, he has said absolutely not. You need to prove why you are doing this. Again, if I owned a company, I don't have to prove to anyone why I'm letting people go. And we have to think of it this way. Obama introduced Obamacare, making it mandatory for you to get insurance for all the employees or pay a fine. So, of course, as a business person, they're going to say, okay, how much is the fine? How much of the employees can we, reduce it by 2 or 3 people, reduce the hours? And those companies adjusted. Now they don't want them to do this. Why? Why don't they want? And everyone's thinking like, oh, it's because of the people. No, that's not why. Because the companies can always put the expense back on the people if they wanted to. They don't, or they can make them pay half for Obamacare, because Obamacare is pretty much more expensive than anything else, and the policies that he's offering are not as good as other policies because they have very high deductibles. What they are doing is they need to build the revenue to pay for the U.S. debt. This is why there is a penalty, because you have to think, when they first introduced this, the insurance companies and Obama thought that if we put a penalty on the individual for not taking health insurance and on companies, they would decide to take the insurance instead of paying the penalty. They were trying to force them into taking insurance. And what they found was that the youth, where they thought, since they don't have a lot of illnesses and they don't get sick that often, they would be the base of Obamacare, and they would be paying the premiums to pay for the older folks who get sick quite much more than younger people. They run into problems as you get older. And what happened was, since the youth of America can't find work, they decided, the penalty of 1% of nothing is nothing. The penalty of 2% of nothing is nothing. Or whatever, part-time money they're making, I'd rather just pay the penalty than pay for health insurance at this point. So insurance companies are seeing that they're not bringing in the revenue. They decided to put all these penalties to force people into insurance because, again, part of this insurance plan are hidden taxes inside, and revenue goes to the government, and profits go to the insurance companies. And this is the entire system. And what it is a complete cash grab. And this is why they have implemented all of these penalties. This is why he's saying everyone needs to be in, because this whole entire thing does not work for the government and the insurance companies if everyone is not in buying the insurance. And a lot of people who do not have work, who are underemployed with part-time work, or have their salary reduced, they are not going out and buying health insurance. This is the problem right now. And he tried to stop this. And again, they're trying to control every aspect of business. It cannot work because people always find a way to get around it. And eventually, when you make no money, you just say, you know what? What's more important? I'd rather spend the money on food than pay $400, $500 a month for health insurance, which I will most likely not use because my deductible is $3,000 or $4,000. So I won't even see anything from health insurance from all the premiums I'm paying. So it's not even worth it. And this is what's happening today. And this is why Obama continually wants to change the law and make it much more difficult for everyone. And this is what he's been doing. This is like the third rewrite that he's done at this time. Now, a couple reports ago, we talked about net neutrality and how this is going to work, where ISP providers like AT&T, Verizon, cable companies, they can decide what sites you can see, which sites you can't see. And right now, AT&T is filing for a patent where part of the patent is they want you to pay for credits. And again, this is going to be a very difficult time when it comes to the Internet, because the Internet, the way we know it, is going to completely change at this time. Because what they're trying to do is they're going to say, listen, these are the sites that we approve and you can go look at. If you want to see another site that we banned, you must pay a credit. And you can purchase the credits from us, and then we'll let you go see it. And there might be other sites where they'll say, you know what, we're not even going to show you those. And again, these companies like AT&T, let's take that for example, if they have streaming videos, they might not let you go to Netflix because it's a competitor. And this is what they're applying for right now. The Internet, the way we know it, the control is going fast forward right now, because they're going to definitely control what you see, when you can see it, and how you can see it. And eventually, they want you to pay for it. And again, they're the ones who are telling you what is good, which they approve, and which sites are bad, which they disapprove on. And we can see this going forward. This is how the control of the Internet is going to start. And we can see it happening right in front of our faces. Okay, now, as we know, the UN Arms Treaty is pending in the Senate in the U.S., and also the Dianne Feinstein bill is still pending in the Senate, because they're waiting for the false flag event to push the agenda forward. And if they can't get these laws passed, President Obama might go to the executive orders and try to pass both of these without the approval of Congress. And we'll have to see how that goes. But right now, in Europe, on February 5th, the European Parliament voted to authorize European Union countries to ratify the United Nations Arms Trade Treaty. So they have already started the disarming of the people in the Eurozone. Many countries are not allowed to have weapons. Here in the U.S., we have the Second Amendment, but you're going to see, as this goes forward, people who are trying to purchase weapons or get weapons, they're going to see their rights being taken away. And again, they want to push this agenda everywhere because they need everyone disarmed so they can have full control of the people. Not just in the U.S., in Canada, in Australia, in the U.K. If you notice, some of these countries, you're not allowed to even have a weapon. And how, and every country that we see where they take weapons away, what happens? The government comes down hard on them. We see mass murders. We see total control of the people. And this has been throughout history that we have seen this. Now, I talk a lot about Afghanistan, and many, many reports ago I said the U.S. is never, ever going to leave Afghanistan. And of course, the U.S. is trying to get President Karzai to sign the bilateral security agreement, and he says absolutely not, because he wants the night raids to stop, where U.S. soldiers can just break into anyone's house, kill anyone they want, and search through their homes for terrorists. And this is what's happening. So right now, of course, Clapper has given them a certain period of time. He said December 2013, then he said January, and now they're starting to realize that Karzai is not going to sign this agreement. Now, the U.S. is never going to leave. Why? Because China is in Afghanistan. They're pumping in billions of dollars into their infrastructure. They have the third largest copper mine in Afghanistan. Afghanistan is in a strategic location which borders against Iran and the Russian states. And the U.S. also has the poppy fields, which they use to pay for all covert operations, selling opium across the world. And they are never going to leave this area. And what they said they're going to do is they're going to wait until Karzai is out of office and try the bilateral security agreement with the next president. And he might be a little bit more easier to convince to sign this. And right now there's a report saying that the U.S. wants to be there for the next 10 years. Again, because they realize the war is coming. They need just this strategic location. They understand that China is there. And if you notice right now, wherever China is, that's where the U.S. is. And there always seems to be some type of little war going on. We see it in the Middle East, in Libya and Lebanon. Guess what? The rebels, China has been pumping in billions of dollars into infrastructure, trying to help the country. The private Western central bankers have a private Western central bank and selling the natural resources using the U.S. dollar. China's on one side, the U.S. is on the other. If you look in Sudan, China's on one side with the rebels, the U.S. is on the other side with the puppet regime. Take a look all over the place. This is what you're seeing. In Kenya, when we had this terrorist attack on the mall, China's on one side, where Kenya's becoming the clearinghouse for the yuan. The U.S. decided to get involved there because they understand that China is there. And we also have to remember there are two countries in Africa that are changing out their U.S. dollar reserves and bringing in the yuan, and most of the other African nations will probably start to follow after that. Now, there is an alert going on about Kim Jong-un's North Korea nuclear test. North Korea is preparing to conduct a nuclear test and launch its largest intercontinental missile in a move likely to trigger a fresh crisis in a region already on high alert. According to South Korean and U.S. intelligence assessments, preparations for the nation's fourth underground nuclear explosion are underway at a testing site in the northeast of the country. And again, this is propaganda. They're building this up because every country that does not have a private Western central bank, they want you to believe that they're going to attack any day. And eventually what will happen is they will be provoked, and eventually something will happen. It will be a false flag event, and they will end up attacking. And they'll say, see, look, they attacked us. See, this is what happens. Now, Obama is out there still telling everyone that the U.S. still retains the right to conduct a military operation in Syria, but he really prefers a political type of settlement in Syria. But if there isn't any, and the situation gets out of hand, the United States still has the right to use a military strike. And he says the situation is very unstable. It is dangerous not only for Syria, but the entire region. And this is coming from Obama. And we know why he's saying this, because they've been building up the propaganda against Assad. The Geneva II is about removing Assad from government and putting in a puppet regime. And what they've been doing is they've been building up the propaganda. Before the Geneva II talks, they started with the war crimes. They started creating reports. They've been telling us there's biological and chemical weapons hidden in the Alawite section of Syria, and they are continually building and building this propaganda because eventually there will be a false flag event. We see the Syrian Electronic Army cyber attacking all the different sites, and eventually what they're going to do is they're going to bring this all home to the U.S. They're telling us there's radicalized people coming from Syria that are already in the U.S., and they are trying to track them because they could be creating bombs, creating terror. They might have plans. And we can see how this is going now. They're also, right now, again, as we know, in peace talks with Iran with their nuclear program, and we know this is a complete illusion. And you have to remember, the private Western central banks and the U.S. government will not go into a country that has nuclear weapons. They will not go into Russia, China, North Korea. This is why we haven't seen them invade them. All the other countries that do not have a nuclear weapon, they will go into. And this is why they continually say that Iran has a nuclear weapon. Oh, they're going to have it 5 months from now, 6 weeks from now, 2 minutes from now. They're continually saying this because they really need to get into Iran to put all their natural resources on the U.S. dollar as a reserve currency. Now, the White House on Monday is drawing the red line, saying with regards to their ballistic missile program, because these ballistic missiles, you could put a nuclear warhead on these missiles, and right now the White House quickly pushed back against what is going on there, and they want to have a discussion about the ballistic missile program, because if Iran does create some type of nuclear bomb, not saying they're going to use it, they will have a tougher time getting into the country, because right now they're trying to infiltrate the banks using this peace deal going on. The IMF is there. They want to set their interest rates. They have the IMF looking into their economic status. They also have Russia there because Iran is making deals with Russia. And again, the Revolutionary Guard has been warning Rouhani about that the U.S., the central bankers, want to remove the government in Iran. If they have a chance, they will take it. And again, we've been seeing the propaganda continually build up against Iran and Syria, because if everything falls apart, what's going to happen is a strike into these countries to take out the governments and to replace the governments with a puppet regime and put all their natural resources on the U.S. dollar as the reserve currency. But we have to remember that Iran and Syria have a pact with each other. If one goes to war, the other one comes to its aid. They also have a pact with China and Russia. So if anything happens, they will get involved, and this is the World War III scenario. Okay, now we understand that China has been making its move into Africa, and the U.S. has always the U.S. always follows, saying there's some type of terrorist attack or terrorist alert. They did it in the Sudan area. We've seen it in the Middle East. And guess what? So what is happening? The U.S. warns of terrorist threat to Uganda capital. The United States has warned a specific terrorist threat to the Uganda capital, saying a group of attackers were looking to strike Uganda capital this month or in March, but without identifying who is behind the actual threat. They're saying that they're ready to strike and they're ready to move. The question is, why? Why all of a sudden is there terrorism in Uganda? The next phase you'll see is that they have to, evacuate the people in the embassy. They're going to put travel advisory up because they're going to go into some type of war. And what is happening right now is that China is pumping in billions and billions of dollars into the infrastructure. The Uganda government has been cozying up to China more so than the U.S. China has been building their infrastructure like expressways, building their agricultural up, building dams for them. And China's relation with Uganda is based on mutual respect. And what we're seeing right now is that China is located in Uganda, in Sudan, in the Middle East, all of these in Afghanistan, almost all these countries, and really at this time, the U.S. is really going to war with China in all of these countries. We are fighting against the other side. The United States government central bankers are fighting against the rebels, Al-Qaeda, which is Chinese-backed people of that country. So in reality, we're kind of in a war with China right now. The only thing is, the world just doesn't know it yet because they don't understand what is going on. We also have to understand that China and Uganda have a bilateral trade agreement, and they've reached around 538 million in 2013, and indicating a 35% increase from 2012, and it has even gone higher in 2014. Now they're projecting that the trade agreement will even surpass 2013. So we can see exactly what is happening. We have all this happening across the globe. Again, Kenya is the clearinghouse for the yuan. Two countries have already switched out their reserves, taking on more yuans, dropping the US dollar. Who knows, maybe Uganda is going to decide to drop their US dollars and start to take on the yuan, which most likely that will happen, and we're going to see this start to spread all over the world. And like I said in many of my other reports, once these countries start dropping the dollar completely, and they don't sell their natural resources using the US dollar, this is when all of these dollars are going to flood back to the United States, and this is when war is going to break out. This is when they're going to use the false flag to start something, and they're going to start it in Syria and in Iran because they need to prop up the system while they're holding everything in check right now, and this is getting much harder to do because you can see the empire of the United States is being spread out all over the globe. Here we are already going into another country. Now, we understand when this false flag event comes, it's going to consist of a cyber attack, and this is why we've been seeing so many cyber attacks in the last couple of months. And today was the biggest one ever. There was a massive denial service attack, and it hit the EU and the US. A massive DDoS attack hit EU and US-based servers, with security companies reporting it to be even more powerful than last year's Spam House attacks. While the method of attack was not new, Cloudflare warned there are ugly things to come because they understand what's going to happen. More and more cyber attacks until the main event, and the one that's going to be, I'll call it the doomsday cyber attack, which is going to hit the financial institutions, the banks, the stock market. We've already seen glitches in all of this. Going to hit the power infrastructure, and this is when everything comes to a screeching halt. So the Fed, the U.S. government, the central bankers, the elite, the globalists, whatever you want to call them, can say, hey, this country over there, Syria, Iran, North Korea, Russia, China, brought down our economy. We need to go to war. Right now, to me, it looks like it's going to be Syria, but we'll have to see how this plays out as we go forward. Right now, they're on the path to have some type of false flag using Syria because they've been building up all the propaganda. But again, this will start World War III, and this will cover up this entire collapse. This has been their goal all along, and it has not changed one bit. And as we know, Assad right now, it's been reported that he's hiding chemical weapons and biological weapons in the Alawite section of Syria that the UN inspectors have no knowledge of, and they've been building this propaganda up. We had U.S. intelligence in front of Congress, reporting this, and again, in my other reports, I said that companies have received bids and have been contracted to create bioterrorism treatments for a bioterrorist attack. And right now, they've come up with a potential drug for the use against Marburg virus has been shown in initial testing to be safe for humans. And again, they're saying that the Marburg virus could be a potential biological terrorism concern, and you break out in a fever. And this report goes on to say that the Marburg virus is a fever that can cause death in as many as 9 out of 10 infected people. Given its lethality, the virus is a leading biological terrorism concern. So you can see what they've been preparing for. We understand they've been building up this propaganda for this false flag event. And again, if they can't get into Iran, if they can't change the Assad regime and put a puppet government in, we are going to see a false flag event here on U.S. soil, because the central bankers have learned, the U.S. government has learned, that anything that happens overseas, the American people, Congress, do not care about that. They will not go to war over that. But if Syria attacks the U.S. with a cyber attack from the Syrian Electronic Army and uses chemical or biological weapons, guess what? The American people will beg, they will want to go to war with Syria. And we can see how this is going to play out. And again, they're going to hit and bring the entire system to a screeching halt, because they have to show that another country has collapsed the economy. And the reason why, and this is the reason why we need to go to war. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.